Welcome to You Make the Difference. I'm Wanda Walker, and today I'm talking to Doug Roberts. And Doug has a vision for community sustainability. He created Rabbit Eye Farm, and he's in the process of creating Gray Hill School Farm. Welcome to the show, Doug.
My pleasure to be here, Wanda.
Yes, you've done a lot of things in life, haven't you?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, tell us about some of the things that you've done.
Well, I started out 16 years old. The day I turned 16, I went to work at as a creeler at Milliken Mills over at Hillside. And from there, I was road construction. I became a fireman for 3 years, City of LaGrange. Mostly, though, photography, video production, and went on to, I'm better known these days for, I ran a tomato house, organic tomato house for Tommy Borders out on the Lower Big Springs Road, and everyone called me the Tomato Man at Kroger.
Yes.
And had several Great Dane dogs. A lot of people know me as a dog trainer, and because of these huge dogs that I walk around with. And then there's New Ventures. I worked with New Ventures for 3 years, helping people with disabilities to find and keep jobs, you know, and that was pretty good run there. And now I am farming for a living. Or,
yes.
Or going broke farming,
but but into farming.
Into farming, yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Well, tell us about Rabbit Eye Farm.
Okay, Rabbit Eye Farms is a for-profit farm. We have, I'm doing a lot of experiments in ways to farm, but it's a berry farm basically. And we have raspberries, blueberries, and blackberries. And whenever I was praying about what I should do with the rest of my life, God would say, plant your blueberries first. And so I did. And we had, first year was a wonderful crop of blueberries.
Yes.
This year, no blueberries.
Huh.
But the blackberries were as big as my thumb, and you know, it was just wonderful. But the blueberries got devastated by this thing called mummyberry disease. And apparently, Georgia became, this year, or this past year, 2015, it became the largest producer of blueberries in the nation, the state of Georgia.
Oh, wow, I didn't know that.
But with that came diseases from all over the country, and you're supposed to spray and things. Mine's totally organic, so I can't spray. And so, you know, you question God and you go, okay, why did you have me plant blueberries first? And so far I'm coming up with one of two things. Either I find the organic answer to mummyberry, which is not there yet, or I find maybe a variety that is mummyberry resistant or something. I have no idea, but you know, I'm sure God has a plan for me on that. So.
Yes, and so who are you selling your berries to?
Well, this year we actually went online, and it was very great reaction from the homeschoolers, and you know, there's only like a 2.5 month period that the berries are ripe, but the public came out and pick your own. And they had a great time, and sometimes we even had these friends of ours, Zach Patton and his wife Renee, who was in the symphony, and they would come out and they would play their fiddles and guitars, and you know, we'd have music, you know, pick and play at the Pick and Pay. So it was,
yeah, you know, that sounds great.
It was a lot of fun.
Yeah. Okay, so then you're going to start Gray Hill School Farm. Tell me about that. Why did you move into that?
Okay, well, the Gray Hill School Farm is actually a nonprofit, and that's where my passion lies, is in the teaching of these organic methods and these really easy methods of farming for seniors, you know, maybe homeless people, kids. You know, there's ways to do this organically and easily. And then but I'm also doing experiments on a scale where I can't really make huge profits, but I can prove that, you know, the big farmers, the people who do have resources and things could do this. And so I'm kind of on the very bare minimum doing experiments, and the bigger stuff for people who actually want to go into business. I want to teach this in Troup County. We are so blessed in this latitude. And when I was in the tomato house, I ran Tommy's Tomatoes.
Yes.
And when I was in the tomato house, we did a lot of research, and we have a latitude here, and it goes about 50 miles north of us and 50 miles south of us, where we have the ideal agriculture belt line, and it goes
Yes.
across the state and close to Savannah, and it goes across all the way to Texas. Okay, so, but this greenhouse belt used to be the breadbasket of the South. You know, there was a reason that Fort Tyler was the last fort to fall here, because all the resources were here. Were so, you know, we had plenty of food and uniforms and things, because everything was coming here. You know, there's some other reasons too, the rail line and the bridges, but this was what they wanted to destroy, to make it where we couldn't come back. And they did it, and we haven't come back agriculturally here, really. And we have we have the right amount of sunlight. We have the right weather where we only have to heat just a little bit if we do greenhouses. You know, we don't have to cool as much. You know, we have, you know, Florida's too hot. You know, but we have resources here that we're not using, and we could do it right in this area and be a model for the rest of the country, and we could provide the food for the country.
And is that latitude, is that the 33rd parallel? Is that what you're talking about?
More or less. It kind of undulates with the foothills and things, but yes, the 33rd, right here in Troup County, we're dead center of the 50 miles north and south, to where we have almost perfect conditions for year-round growing.
Well, you know, that reminds me that, you know, Jerusalem is on the 33rd parallel.
I did not know that.
Yes, and so you know how God has blessed their land.
Right.
And so that's very interesting that on that 33rd parallel here in Troup County, that you're saying that that is just really could be the next Napa Valley.
Yes, we could do it right though. They're out of water out there. They're doing the big farming, the pesticides, all of that. We could do it without all that right here.
Yes. Yeah. Well, that is a blessing.
Yeah.
Now, if the organic greenhouses that you were doing and managing were so successful, how come you're now changing directions?
Okay. The big greenhouse that we had, and there's some pictures here. So I grew tomatoes.
Yes.
And it was a monoculture. And it was wonderful. It's the most modern greenhouse I've ever seen. People used to compare me to Epcot when they'd come in it. And it was, I grew 33-foot plants on average. I pull one up, and you can see it in the picture, and I've got the tape measure out.
Yes.
And that's just a random one that I pulled out of 940 plants that were in that greenhouse. But the monoculture, and we had bees in the greenhouse, and we had beneficial insects that we would hang, and the owner made a decision to quit doing the beneficials, because he just couldn't see what I could see under the microscope, and you know that the eggs were hatching, these little cards, and you couldn't even see any bugs because the parasitic wasps were so small.
Yes.
I mean, you saw no bugs except for the bees in the greenhouse. Well, I kept, you know, saying we can't do without them, and he's like, well, I think we can. Anyway, so he quit buying those. You know, it was $60 every 2 years. I mean, every 2 months we had to pay $60. It was one of the cheapest things on the list, but we had a whitefly infestation. And we tried to get ahead of it, but the whole crop was wiped out by whiteflies.
Oh, wow.
And that monocultural, you know, keep everything out, works very well until it doesn't work. And then it's devastating, because if you do let a parasite in, then it has breeding ground, you know, there's just nothing to do about it. I mean, it's such a nice environment for them that it kills your whole crop. Well, most people don't have those resources to keep it out, and even if you do have that, there's failures. And so the monocultural, the more research I do, gets me back to nature, and nature takes care of it on its own. So when I have an infestation of bugs in mine, God takes care of it. if I have a bad crop one year because of all this infestation of bugs, then all the predator wasps and things and all the beneficials go, hey, there's a feast here.
Yes.
And so they breed like crazy. And so for the next 5 years, I have no pests almost of that variety. And so it's really neat how, you know, you lose a little, but you gain a lot. And you can do, the odds are that you're going to have a failure anyway. You know, they're going to get there even with all the, you can't keep nature out of those greenhouses. And so, you know, why not work with it? You still get some produce, even with the bugs or pests and things, usually you get some. But if you have the monoculture and you get infested, then you have to really, really spray and things to get that down. And many times you lose your crop anyway.
Yes.
And so,
now you've mentioned to me a couple of different kinds of farming that I had never heard of, and one's the Eden farm. Tell me about that.
Okay, the Eden farming is it's an easy farming. It's back to Eden farming. It's actually, and it's the Strong method is named after a lady Strong that's written some books. There's the mulch method. There's the cardboard method. But all of them basically are, the first rule in organic farming is cover your soil. Cardboard, mulch, could be rocks, but cover your soil, and that will start the process. The first year you'll have this much living soil. The second year this much. The third year, you know, and it grows exponentially, especially if you keep mulching that. And then, you know, it gets Ricky Wolf's farm, Ricky and Carrie Wolf out here. This was all theory to me until I saw his farm. And the Sierra Club came and did a farm tour, and I went with them. They came to my farm, but I went with them to Ricky's farm. And he was in his 7th year of soil building, and he had this deep, rich, wonderful, wonderful stuff. The plants were just huge and growing.
Yes.
And so everything that I had been theorizing, I was in my 3rd year on some soil, 2nd year on some soil, and I'm going, okay, this looks like it's working. But once I saw the 7-year soil, it's like, okay, this is, you know, what we need to be doing.
Wow. And so Ricky had evidently learned about that somewhere and started doing that? Or?
Sure, he's been to all kinds of, I think he went to Maine or something and looked at organic farms, and he's did a really good study on it. But his out on the New Hudson Mill Road. It's not far from mine, but that was the first time I'd ever been to his farm. I go there fairly regularly now, and he built a greenhouse.
Yes. And
done really, really well with it, but I have some things that can help him utilize that to its maximum potential too. So we're talking, and I'm trying to help him as much as I can. And again, I can teach even, you know, I've got something for the very best farmers. I've got something for the newbies that have never farmed before in their lives.
Yeah,
but,
and you do have an interest in the greenhouses. Tell me about that. Tell me about your interest and also how you see them being used.
Okay. Again, we have the potential for year-round growth. I grew tomatoes for a year and a half, you know, and they were still very strong when I cut them down, you know,
yes.
because he wanted to start a new crop. And they are more prolific if you rotate them every year or so, you know, and there's a lot of people that do it every 6 months. But I proved that we could do this year-round. And the greenhouses, the trouble with the greenhouse, if we have electricity failure or something, is that they don't ventilate on their own. Okay, and my experiments, there's these wax-filled cylinders that will, when the temperature hits 72 degrees, they will start to push a rod up. Well, you can have a vent on that rod.
Yes. And
that wax-filled cylinder will heat up at 72 degrees, will open up, and it will ventilate on its own. And then when it goes below 72 degrees, it will slowly come down. And so your greenhouse doesn't freeze. In the wintertime here, the problem is that you can seal up your greenhouse because it's going to be temperatures like today, 26
Right.
degrees or so, but the sun is shining. So by noon or by 10 o'clock, if you forget to go out there and ventilate, if you don't have an automatic ventilator or if you have electricity failure, then that greenhouse can be 140, 150 degrees in there and scald your plants.
Wow.
By noon, just because of the solar gain in that thing.
Yes.
And so it's if you don't maintain it, you lose it. And you know, you had to be there every day, you know, and I want it to be easy. I want it to be where
Right.
if I'm not there, if I do have a vacation one day,
Yes.
or that I wouldn't have to worry that someone is maintaining that for me. And I'm doing experiments with, I have some pipes that go in the ground way down 150 feet down to a low point that's cooling. And so those same flaps can be used for to open up the cool air that's coming in, and that will make it even more efficient to ventilate on its own. There's also the heating on its own. Now, the sun in the summertime is way up here.
Yes.
Can you see my hand? Yeah. Okay, the sun in the summertime is way up here, and it goes in the arc like this. And in the wintertime, it gets low in the horizon and it arcs like this. And so if you have barrels or tanks of water in your greenhouse, then the sun in the winter can heat them. And if there's shade over this part, as the sun in the summer comes, then it's shaded and the water helps cool your greenhouse.
Yes.
And so that same tank of water and the thermal mass of it, just that much water in one mass, water only changes temperatures at the edges. Okay, when it evaporates, you know, the core mass of that water doesn't change temperatures fast at all. I mean, it's very, very slow. And so that will keep your greenhouse from freezing by just having a tank of water in there.
Yes, and you
Right.
have some ideas for using greenhouses for the homeless. Tell me about that.
Okay, greenhouses for the homeless. It's been an idea for a long time. I've got these, I've been experimenting with these hoop house, very low tech, low cost construction. And for the past 3 years, they've either blown over, you know, the winter makes it not feasible because, you know, it tears up.
Yes.
The wind and the sun get it. But now, I believe I have it.
Good.
And it's just using these farm panels. Okay, so you arch the farm panels, and you, but if you put one as a brace along there, then the wind can flex it and it pops right back up. And so now I have something that I believe can work, and you can use these same things for emergency shelters, things like that. You know, it's much like a tent.
Yes.
But Mother Earth News, I don't know if you've ever heard of those, but in the 70s, they were doing this same kind of thing. Well, the problem with their a bunch of hippies and article here, article there, is that there's nothing, you can find all these old articles, but there's nothing, no organization to it at all. I mean, it's catch as can, you might find it, you might not.
Right.
But I ran across a couple of articles on greenhouses that they had done way back in the 70s, and they're very, very simple, where if you have some stakes in the ground at an angle, you can cover it quickly with something, tie a rope around it, and it's sealed. You know, and it keeps, you know, it's just a real quick way of doing that.
An inexpensive way, right?
Right, right.
Yes.
You know, less than $300, I think you can have a fairly nice sized structure that also grows plants. And, you know, if you have a tank of water in there, now the tank of water might cost, I haven't researched the water part, but if this could be utilized as a grow, you know, part of the garden, and then they could also stay in it if they had to, I think it would be a neat thing. It's one thing I'm working on.
Yes.
So.
And then and during the recent A Night Without a Roof, you spent the night on the square.
Yeah.
And that was to bring attention to homelessness,
Right.
and also give the community an opportunity to come in and really talk to people who were homeless and to hear their story. Tell me about your experience on the square.
Okay, I did it on a whim. I heard about it. In fact, one of the prizes given out was going to be a bell that John Howell, he does battle bells.
Yes.
And he said, well, can I borrow yours to show him what I'm talking about? I said, sure, you know. And so I went to this friend of mine at 5D Designs. I knew he had cardboard out there. I said, well, I'm going to do it too. And so right before dark, I showed up with this cardboard, and I went to setting up, and the newspaper guy was there. And I was the only one setting up at the time, so he took pictures of me. And so a friend of mine told his wife, he said, Doug must have got a divorce, and you know, he's homeless now. You know, and she said, read the article, stupid.
That's right.
You know, but in doing that, it really got me focused more on this. You know, and we can do gardens here and very easily, which is more of the Eden gardening thing. I'm sorry I didn't elaborate on that as much, but we can do gardens, community gardens, very cheaply and very easily, and it makes it where you don't have to weed them. You don't have to do all this work, and so it'd be perfect for, you know, when I'm 80, I want to still be gardening.
Yes,
and I think if we grow these, you already have a victory garden, and I'm interested in going and seeing what you guys are doing and see if I can help with that.
The Maya shelter, yes.
And there's a location in LaGrange that I think would be ideal for. I have a rental house on that corner, and the guy who helped me in the greenhouse was named Anthony Tucker. He was the first black lieutenant in the fire department here in LaGrange.
Yes.
And you know, his family lives there in my rental house, and I think he could maintain that garden, you know, to some extent, and we could grow sweet potatoes and collards, and that neighborhood would have food.
Yes.
You know, he tells me that there's a big need for food for those families, you know, that, you know, sometimes they just don't have it, and they could always go out and dig them some potatoes and cut them some collards, and the collards will keep growing back, and so will the potatoes for years if you establish this, and it'd be less maintenance for the city if you mulch it and you don't have to cut the grass. So.
Yeah, and both of those are really good for you too.
Oh yeah, okay.
Yeah. All right, and you were telling me a little bit about the red clay ditch farming. What is that? I mean, that should go over really well here, right? Right,
it should. Now, I have, this is proven, okay? My berry farm is a great example of this. But I came up with this method. There was a guy in the 60s, I think, maybe the 50s, and he was German, and it was hugelkultur. And it's basically using old technologies, but he found that if you took a whole tree, not just the trunk, you have to have the branches and things, because the natural nematodes and they don't build a colony on just the trunk. They have to have different sizes of wood and wood chips and things to colonize and do these. But if you pile them all up and you put dirt over that and you grow in that dirt, that it will, those trees have mined minerals and carbon for 30, 50 years, and it will give all these back to your plants in a form that they can take, and it will also hold water like a sponge. And so, you know, during your droughts, a lot of people don't even have to water at all during the droughts, because of they have this sponge in there that is slowly releasing water to the plants. Well, that living soil that you create in this mound can be duplicated in the red clay. The red clay actually has a great deal of nutrients and things in it, but the plants can't get them out. It's like if you take a Wendy's milkshake and the straw goes flat. You know, you can't get it out of there because it binds with water and turns into a hard surface, and the plants just have to work really hard to get those. But if you, and these cultures are in layers too, but if you cut down this way, then each layer can mine out of the red clay, okay?
Yes.
But if you take that tree, and what I did was I did 3-foot ditches, and I sloped the ground to where the rainwater would go to the ditch in the terraces, and I put all the trees, it was a forest behind my house, and I plucked the trees out of the ground with a large backhoe, and he'd shake the dirt off and throw them in a pile. And anyway, then he dug these trenches and made them where the water would flow, and he put those in the ground, and then he would put, we planted in those ditches. And these trees are giving up these nutrients. I haven't fertilized those berries at all. They're big as my thumb. The blueberries, like I said, were very nice the first year. If it hadn't been for the mummy berry, which is a fungus, it's not nutrition.
Yes, yes.
Okay, but it works. And it's something that I think that can be used on commercial scale or a small scale here, either one. It absolutely works. And the trees give back this energy and create a living soil culture. And the deeper you can have that living soil, you know, the better off you are. What they do is they, when you put fertilizer down, that plant takes maybe 30%, the rest of it washes away. It's not real easy for that plant to get that fertilizer. But if you have living soil, those living cultures, they will go over here and they'll say, okay, what do you need? And they say, well, I need some nitrogen and phosphorus and things. And they say, okay, we can get that for you. And they go down here to the tree and they mine it, and they have this barter system amongst themselves, and they will trade it for the sugars for the plants. And this whole, God will do it if you leave it alone.
Yes.
When you till your soil, it kills that top layer, and so you're killing your soil when you till it. And if you cover it and let God do it, then there's a wonderful network that's created, and they will mine and give those plants what they need, and in a form that the plant can really, really easily utilize it.
Yes.
And
yeah, it's really amazing what God does, isn't it?
oh yeah, oh yeah.
And He He loves for us to be connected with the land. He connects us with the land. And we have about a minute and a half left, and I know that you want to be involved in educational opportunities here in LaGrange where you share the farming knowledge that you've learned. How do you see that happening?
Couple of ways, and I don't know how this gets funded, but I would love to be able to go and find we haven't even talked about aquaponics and doing the fish cultures and super fertilizers and things that I'm working on, but if I can go to the experts, I can teach that to Troup County.
Yes.
You know, I have a way of disseminating information into where people can understand it and make it easy. And if we reach the children, you know, there's kids over there on Honeycutt Street that I see, you know, I go over there and collect the rent and things, and these kids just come to me and gravitate to me, and they want to learn, and they, you know, and I volunteer at Hills and Dales. I hit every 5th grader already.
Yes.
But I would love to see the partnerships between LaGrange College, Point University, and maybe some of the high schools, maybe teaching the smaller kids. I would love to be a part of that, where I could reach out to these kids at that level and that age and get them to grow in things, get them excited about it, and that it's a cool thing to do.
That sounds great. So. Well, thank you for all you do, and I know it's been a lot of work to research, but it sounds like you've truly enjoyed it. Yeah, and I'd just like to say thank you for watching You Make the Difference, and to remember that you truly do.